Hey, I got a quick question for you. Are you working on the organization or in it? Hi, my name is Dacy. I am otherwise known as Big Agile, and my goal is to help you and your teams and your organizations perform better with next-gen agility tactics. Your stand-ups are fine. Your handoffs are killing you. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. Our topic today about coaching the system, not the team, is often misinterpreted as, well, I'll just leave my team alone and forget about it. No. You want your teams to perform well. Absolutely. Start there. Get your teams fully functional and productive. But I promise you that most of the problems are not within the team, or if they are related to the handoffs within the teams, or what we say is the seams between the teams. And so I typically think of so many of us focusing on our stand-ups and how's our review going. All that should be pretty well set. Those are easy events to tackle. But the handoffs that we have, or the decision latency we have in the organization, is often overlooked or masked, either because we're only focusing on the team and haven't been getting permission. You don't need permission, by the way, to work on the larger organization. So that's what I'd like to talk about today, because it's not easy work. And it's like grasping at straws. How do we do this work? So what I want to talk about today are value stream maps. There's plenty of tools online. There's plenty of blogs online to go research, physically how to conduct these things. And we've actually written a lot of blogs in the last month or so about DORA metrics and flow metrics, and actually how to write Python scripts to make these metrics observable. So catch that on our blog. Many posts about that. But the first thing I want to talk about is value stream mapping, and just sitting down with your team and saying, okay, if we have one small backlog item or a fix or something that flows through our systems, what are the steps and the handoffs and the people involved that take place? So the first thing I'd like to show you is just a really simple graphic that I found on the internet that is a good way that I think is to start a value stream mapping without having to get into Visio and all these other design tools that we have. Just build out a chart and say, okay, what is the process that kicks off a lot of these handoffs that happen either within the team or outside the team? So we can map out those processes and talk about, okay, we have, for a software team, we committed code to the repo. We have a pull request, a code review. We got to build it out. It's like so many people focus on, code changes. It's like, the hardest part is really understanding how we're going to approach a problem and what the automation of the business process that needs to happen. But there is a lot of logistics that go on once you've made a code change. It's not just shipping it off to production and letting it go. So it's totally okay to have these steps and these handoffs as long as we all find them valuable. But for this team, they're going to say that we need a pull request, we need a code review, you're going to have a continuous integration, continuous delivery build of some sort. We'll do some functional testing. So a lot of times what will happen is our developers will write some integration tests for that. Even before that, they'll write some unit tests. So there's a lot of different ways for teams to decide to do internal automation within the tools that they're writing the code against. But at some point, some human has to look at it and say, yes, that is working according to our standards, or running the integration test to try to figure out if the workflow is working. So there's a lot of stuff that might go in there that's valuable, but it may be slowing us down. And oftentimes our stakeholders are like, what's taking so long? These are the things that we can actually show them and relate it back to something that they're familiar with. But at any rate, we're going to map that out. Just do it. Don't get too fancy with it. But once we map that out, I found a value stream map from Amazon. I think this was from an AWS playbook. And what they did is started to turn that value stream map that they had into actionable insight and flow metrics that they can actually start seeing what percent of the swim lane are these items taking up. And that's where the real secret sauce happens. So the first step is we want to map it out, maybe more with a hand-drawn map, and then put that into some tool and decide what measurements do we want to start tracking based on that value stream map. And then if we see some bottlenecks or we see some sluggy slowdowns, what are some experiments that we can run? And we actually just blogged on this recently about a value stream mapping, talking about seams, not teams. We produced a diagram for that, so go check it out on our blog. But here we have our value stream map that we can show everybody involved. How does work actually flow through the system? And then we can start figuring out on the handoffs, are they internal or external to the team? And we can start forming a decision latency index, a very popular diagram that's been around in management science for a long time. But we can repurpose this for our agile teams and say, okay, what was the event and how much value did we lose from the event? And again, not judging, it may be a valid step. If you're producing a pacemaker, for a heart pacemaker, you're going to have a lot of steps that have to go through testing and controls and things like that. We celebrate that. But at the end of the day, they are impacting the ability to deliver. So having everybody involved in seeing these indices really helps take pressure off your team, because I feel like what happens a lot of times is if something is moving slow, everybody kind of points the finger at the developers. The developers are going slow. More often than not, the developers are working in a system that's either poorly designed for flow, and they don't know how to articulate that. And that's where we come in. Work on the organization, not in it. Get the team fully functional and productive. They're going to have handoffs within their own teams. But what we're really talking about is a system that they're operating in. Doing Scrum in one team, fairly hard. Doing Scrum in 20 teams, well, if you can't do it in one team, you can't do it in 20. And you start getting a lot more affected by the system when you start scaling. So keep that in mind. So this decision latency diagram is really what we can use to help us figure out those context switching there. And so you can see the latency and the amount of value that was lost during those steps. And finally, you can start producing, turning those into better metrics that you can produce on a leader's dashboard that we talked about in our blog post. And so we'll talk about the amount of time it took to say discovery. Discovery is not a bad thing in Agile, by the way. You still have to discover. So there's going to be time our team spends doing that. And then we have development. That's writing the code, testing the code, all that kind of stuff. And then doing some functional review. Does it work as we intended? Deploying it and getting feedback. Those are all great steps. And this is a good example of metrics that you can show your teams. And so then you can actually turn that into a better, chart that looks at, okay, here's the amount of hours that this one item took, and here's the percent of the value stream that we had in there. And so what we're talking about here is well beyond the team themselves. We're talking about coaching the system, not the team. Obviously, we're going to spend time coaching the team, but if they're working in a bad system, there's no amount of coaching for that team that you can do to help them perform better. So give us a like and subscribe on this YouTube channel. What we're trying to do is find a better medium to share some of these concepts with you that are modern and maybe easier for you to digest, but there's a lot to unpack in some of these topics. So also feel free to sign up for our email newsletter that we deliver. We try to deliver once a week, or you can follow us on LinkedIn or our blogs. We try to produce content in various forms or fashion everywhere. So we would love for you to join us on that journey. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next week with another topic.